Welcome into the Thomas Fitch Sports Show. As usual, I'm your host, Thomas Fitch. Texas sneaks out a win over Baylor, takes sole control of the Big 12 lead, and there's a lot of shakeup in the rest of the college football world. Plus, we have a guest joining us. John Trapp is going to come on a little bit to break down the upcoming NBA season. All that and more coming up right after this. Yeah, so we will start off talking about the Texas game. Texas barely beating Baylor 23-17, just snuck out that win. Did not watch the whole game, so we'll break it down fairly quickly. But the big story of the game, the whole reason why it was so close, obviously Ehlinger goes down on the first drive with what appears to at first be a hand injury, then it turns out he has shoulder injury. He ends up being out for the game. Buechele comes in and plays for the rest of the game. Obviously, Buechele hasn't played in a while, a little rusty, and he struggles for a little bit. But at the end of the day, Texas able to get out the win. Before we go into our breakdowns, update on Sam. He has been diagnosed with a grade 1 shoulder sprain. The team believes he's going to be able to come back for Oklahoma State. Fortunately, Texas with a bye this week, so the next week the team believes he can be back to start. But here's the deal. Obviously was not Shane's greatest game, but you got to look at the fact that while, yes, I know he's preparing a lot, he said after the game, your job as a backup is to be ready at any situation to go into the game, but obviously he's not taking the first-team reps, so he doesn't have great chemistry with those first-team receivers and just looked a little rusty in the game. But you give him 2 weeks to kind of work with the first-team guys. If you have to start Shane against Oklahoma State, I'm not super worried about that. An Oklahoma State team that's struggling a little bit. Obviously, Justice Hill, great player, but not a lot of they struggle at quarterback, struggle at defense. So if Shane has to start, I'm not as worried. And there's definitely a good argument that could be made of saying, hey, let's start Shane in 2 weeks, give Sam a chance to get 100% healthy before the big game against West Virginia. We'll see what the team does. Also kind of just depends on how Sam's rehab goes. So getting into the offense, obviously, anytime you're playing with a backup quarterback, there are going to be some offensive struggles. That's what happens when you bring in a backup quarterback who hasn't played in a while. Definitely was not Buechele's best game. But like I said, you have to remember, he's not been taking the first-team reps. And so there were a lot of times where he overthrew guys, and I think a lot of that is he's not used to, when you're throwing the deep ball, and he threw a lot of deep balls because that's one thing he's good at. But the deep ball is so much about timing, and Ehlinger has been practicing with Colin Johnson, with Devin Duvernay, with Lil Jordan. Whereas Buechele, I'm sure he's still throwing to them, but he's not throwing to them as much. And so getting that speed down, especially when you're throwing to a guy like Devin Duvernay, who has speed, getting that speed down is hard when you haven't been practicing that. So I think that was one reason for his struggling. But at the end of the day, he played good enough for Texas to get the win. Through 20 of 34, 184 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Not great, but, a win is a win. And that's kind of what you look back at this game. That's kind of the story of this game is, Texas didn't play their best. They didn't play their best against Tulsa. They didn't play their best against Kansas State. Didn't play their best against Baylor. Yet all 3 of those were wins. Last year, that didn't happen. Last year, if Texas didn't play their best, they weren't going to win. If they played their best, they still might not win. But the fact that Texas can play their best and win and play not their best and still win is encouraging. This also goes to the fact that Texas often plays to the ability of their opponent. But at the end of the day, if you're playing to the ability of your opponent and you're still winning games, that's all that matters. And one of I think the most telltale signs, in my opinion, of good teams, and you'll hear a lot of people say this: good teams find ways to win. Clemson did that a couple years ago when they made the college football playoff. Florida State before that. Teams that, were winning some ugly games against Syracuse and Pitt and NC, like those kind of teams. But you know what? They're wins. And at the end of the day, if Texas wins out, it doesn't matter how much they win out. If Texas wins out, wins the Big 12, they're in the college football playoff. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I don't think Texas is going to do that, but they're at the point where they could do that. And so that's why getting this win was big. It did feel like we were watching the Texas of old on Saturday, and I think the big reason is Shane is the Texas of old. An offense that's struggling to get points. The defense, can they hold off the other team's offense enough? Just kind of an ugly game where you're stressed the whole time. And there's a reason that Sam's starting. And I know obviously, like I've said multiple times, the things that Shane is dealing with, having not played in a while. But this game showed just how big Sam is for Texas. And, if Sam stays in this game, it's not as close as it ended up being. It's not a 6-point game. Texas wins this, I would say 30, 40 something to 17. And it's not, I don't think many people would debate that. Sam's just a better quarterback. I think one of the worries with Sam and why a lot of people like Shane over Sam was Shane's accuracy. Shane was only 20 of 34, had a lot of incompletions. Sam's been pretty accurate this season. And I know, knocking on wood, has yet to throw an interception since the Maryland game. Shane already threw an interception in the game. And so, I think the fact that this game was so close shows just how big of a part Sam is to this offense and to this entire Texas team. And I think as a Texas fan, any Texas fan should be reassured by that, especially the fact that he's just a sophomore and he has, I want to say, probably, I don't think he's not going to leave early. He has a chance to be a great college player. He's not going to be a good pro player. Ehlinger won't be. But I think a lot of encouragement to see that, okay, this Ehlinger really is making a big difference on this college football team. And in college football, having a good quarterback makes the difference between being a good and bad team. And that's why it's the main reason Texas has struggled, is the lack of having a quarterback. Let's go to the running game. Keontae Ingram had his best game. The last couple games, he's really just improved every game, which is really exciting to see. Rushed for 110 yards on 19 carries, 5.8 yards per carry. No, it doesn't surprise me that he would get a lot of runs, obviously, because you're playing with the backup quarterback. Trey Watson had 13 for 41. But at this point, you got to look at that and say, okay, Keontae Ingram needs to be the starter of this team. He's outperforming Watson, more yards per carry. He can do more with less, better vision, better speed. Only thing Watson has is the fact that he's older, and as the fifth year or whatever, the grad transfer. But Ingram has just simply outperformed Watson. So I think Ingram needs to be getting the start from here on out. The only thing that I think Watson may be better than Ingram at is pass blocking, but Ingram just has really, since week 1, week 2, been outperforming Watson. So hopefully the coaches will go ahead and make those changes. Wide receiver, Colin Johnson, unsurprisingly has a great game. 11 catches, 132 yards. Reason I say unsurprisingly, obviously he and Shane Buechele have a lot of chemistry. They're good friends. They work together a lot over the offseason. And so it's no surprise that Colin has 11 catches for 132 yards, whereas LJ only has 41 yards receiving. One thing that I really did like, LJ did have a rushing touchdown. I like that they're finally using him in that, I guess we can still call it the 18-wheeler package, but the kind of wildcat direct snap running in the end zone on a short yardage play. And I think it also helps the fact that he threw that touchdown in the OU game, just because I lost my train of thought. But, so when we said this back when Tyrone Swoops was running the 18-wheeler, you throw the ball a couple times out of that formation, and all of a sudden it just opens up that threat. You don't have to throw it well, but the defense knows, okay, if we put everybody and pack the box and there's a receiver open, they can throw it to him and find the open guy. And so I think that definitely helps that package. Now, I think when Sam comes back, I think we'll see less of Lil Jordan, because Sam running it down the goal line has been such a successful play. But overall, offense, about what you would expect without Ehlinger. And that's why, even if Texas had lost this game, I wouldn't have been super disappointed just because you're playing without the leader of your team. You're playing without arguably your star player. And I think this game clearly showed how much of a star Sam is for this team. But, at the end of the day, like I've said, they get the win. Moving to the defensive side, defense basically just does what they need to do to get the win. No more, no less. They gave up 17 points to a good Baylor offense. Baylor scored 33 points on OU. They held Charlie Brewer, a really good quarterback, to 240 passing yards, and even more impressively held or kept Baylor rushing to 88 yards, which is always good whenever you can hold a team under 100 rushing yards. Now, to be fair, they almost did cost Texas the game, and for those of y'all just listening on the podcast, to do air quotes around the cost, because obviously if Baylor had gone on and scored there, it wouldn't have just been the defense's fault. But, letting Baylor, the offense, drive down at the end of the game, that's a place where you have to get a stop. But, they did. And that's something that this defense has been good at is, not necessarily looking the prettiest, but getting the stops when they need to. And got the huge stop as the clock expired to keep Baylor from winning. I would say the best performances on defense, without a doubt, got to be Charles Menahu and Caden Stearns. Menahu, 2 sacks. He's really the last 3, 4, or 5 games has really stepped up on the D-line and played really well. Caden Stearns, another huge, just kind of coming across the field, catches it, gets the toe tap, just looking like a complete stud. So those 2 guys playing good. The whole defense really is playing good, and like I said they did no more, no less than they needed to do. But 17 points, anytime you're holding a team under 20 points, I don't care how good of an offense they have, you hold a team under 20 points, you're doing a good job as a defense. And especially responding well from the OU game, where you give up 40-plus points, being able to come back and hold a good Baylor team to 17 points is impressive in its own regard. Special teams, just kind of a couple notes. Bachevsky, he needs to get off the punts quicker. And that's a big reason why he's had a lot of punts blocked. He's had a lot of punts that have been close to blocked, is when you actually watch him going to make the punt, he takes a little extra kind of half step and then has a slow release. You can't do that, especially because Texas has struggled to block the punt, and also the fact that teams know that he's taken a while to get the punt off, so they're bringing pressure because they have a chance to block it. And so somebody just needs to work with him and say, hey, you got to take out that little half step. You just get the ball, plant the foot, and punt. And hopefully they'll work with him on that. But no huge improvement from him. Like I've said, I think the improvement with him will come over the offseason. Dicker had a disappointing miss, 2 disappointing misses. One of them was like 50-plus yards. The other one was a little closer. But I think the thing you have to remember about Dicker and Bachevsky is they're both true freshmen. And the nerve to go out there and kick the ball as a true freshman is incredibly impressive. Obviously, Dicker with a heck of a game last week against OU, showing a lot of nerve. But these guys are young. I think there's a lot of hope with these guys. Anyways, when we come back, we'll be talking some college football. All right, so let's talk some college football. There was some chaos, a lot of top 10 and just top 25 teams losing. Georgia goes down, Washington goes down, West Virginia goes down. So I think this week what we're going to do, change it up a little bit. Instead of a conference breakdown, I'm going to break down and do kind of a little buy-sell on the top 10 teams, and kind of a buy-sell on if I think that they have a legitimate chance to make the college football playoff. We'll start with number 1. These are all rankings from the AP poll. Number 1, Alabama. You'd be an idiot not to buy Alabama. They're just dominating teams right now. Now, to be fair, because of their D, I think they could be a little vulnerable come playoff, but they're at the point where, A, they could still lose a game and make the playoffs. B, I don't think they're going to, this is one of the most dominant offenses that I think we've ever seen in an Alabama team, as long as Tua's healthy. Even if Tua isn't healthy. Having Jalen Hurts as a backup quarterback is not a bad option. And I know Obviously, Texas saw kind of the aspect of using a backup quarterback with Shane Buechele, but Jalen Hurts is a much better quarterback than bringing in, say, a Shane Buechele, who's at that not even a terrible backup. But, yeah, absolutely buying on Alabama. Now, to be fair, they have not really been challenged yet. I know they played A&M, and they played Missouri, and they played those teams well, but they have LSU in 2 weeks, and I think that'll give us a good feel for just how good they are going against another top 10 team. I think they'll have an easy time against LSU, but we'll talk about LSU in a second. Number 2 in the AP poll, Ohio State. Have to buy this team too, and they really control their own destiny. Only real tough matchup left is Michigan. Getting past Penn State for them was huge. I think Dwayne Haskins is legit, and I think it's very possible that we see another Saban-Myers battle in the college football playoff. So buy on them. Number 3, Clemson. I'm going to sell this Clemson team. And I think some of that is because you can't. I feel like you got to sell someone in like the top 5. But also I just think this is not a perfect Clemson team. And I know Clemson's had teams that aren't perfect and have just found ways to win games. But the thing with Clemson is if they lose a game down the stretch because the ACC is so weak, I think that boots them out of the college football playoff. I don't think they can afford to lose another game, and I think there's a good chance that they could lose another game. Now, they don't have any other ranked teams currently left on their schedule except for whoever they play in the ACC championship game. But at this point, they have Duke left. They have NC State next week. NC State, who that's going to be, I think that'll be a close game. Duke, and some other teams, Boston College, that could certainly pull off an upset. And that happens, Clemson's out of it. And I think another thing that people are talking about is, Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback, but he is just a freshman. And freshmen are bound to make mistakes. And the way this Clemson team is they're not invincible enough to where they can win a game without Trevor, Lawrence playing good. So if Trevor Lawrence has a bad game, makes some mistakes down the stretch, this team loses a game, and I think that takes them out of the conversation for the college football playoff unless a lot of other chaos happens. Number 4, Notre Dame. I'm buying high on this Notre Dame team, probably too high because they are Notre Dame and can often be overhyped. But they've had a lot of good wins. They have obviously they always have a pretty tough strength of schedule because they're not in the conference. They're at the disadvantage though because they don't have a conference championship game, and so they lose a game and they're out of the playoff without a doubt. Not having that playoff game, or the conference championship game, but except for USC, they're through their tough part of the schedule. The win against Michigan looks really good at this point, and so they went out. All they have to do is beat USC. I don't think they have any other real tough tests, and so that's why I like this Notre Dame team. I think they're really growing as this season goes on. Number 5, LSU. I'm selling them right now. Kind of for the same reasons that I've used the whole season when I've kept them out of my top 4 is a couple things. A, I don't think they're consistent enough to win out, which they have to do obviously to make the college football playoff at this point, especially having a loss in the SEC. And they also still have to get past Bama. Now, if they were to beat Bama, I think things change for them a lot because now they control their own destiny to win the SEC West. But at this point, I don't think they have a good chance of beating Bama. I don't think they have the offense to keep up with Bama's offense. And even if they were to beat Bama, I don't know if they're consistent enough to win on a week-to-week basis and win out and go to the SEC championship game. So that's why I'm selling them. Number 6 is Michigan. I'm buying Michigan, but I'm buying them low. Obviously, like I've said, with Notre Dame looking good, the loss to them with the first game of the season really doesn't look bad at all now. They've shown a lot of growth over their season, and they do control their own destiny. I think a lot of these teams do control their own destiny, but the fact that they do definitely helps them. And the reason that I'm buying low on them is they still have to face Penn State, Michigan State, and Ohio State to even have a chance of making it to the conference championship, where they'd probably have to likely face Wisconsin again for a chance to make it to the college football playoff. So that's 4. Wisconsin will likely, I would assume Wisconsin would be ranked. But even if Wisconsin's not ranked, that's still 3 ranked teams and another solid team that they have to get past. to make it to the college football playoff. And so that's why I'm buying low, because I think this is a talented team. But and I also think if they get past, obviously they win those 3 games, not only are they in the college football playoff, but I think that they can jump up and be, a top. I don't think they jump Bama, but they could be a 2-3 team just because of their strength of schedule. Coming in at number 7, Texas, our Texas Longhorns, and I hate to say it, but you kind of got to sell this Texas team as far as making it to the college football playoff. I think the only reason this team's in the top 10 is because they do control their own destiny to win the Big 12. And, if Texas wins out, they are in the college football playoff. And so, unlike teams LSU, Michigan, who have really tough roads to the conference championship, to the college football playoff, Texas has a pretty easy road. Their only ranked team left on the schedule is West Virginia, and then they'd likely have to play either West Virginia again or OU again in the conference championship if they were to win out. But, they have tough games on the road, going to Oklahoma State on the road. Not sure if Sam will be healthy for that. Going to Tech on the road. And obviously still have to face Iowa State, who's had some almost, had a close game with OU, and beat Oklahoma State, beat West Virginia last weekend. And so, while I think this is the Texas has a pretty easy schedule, I just don't see the talent there enough to say, like, I find it hard to look at this Texas team and say this is a college football playoff team. I can look at them and feel like they're a Big 12 championship team, and I think they can still lose a game in conference, like I've said. They can still lose a game in conference and be in the conference championship. But I'm selling this Texas team. And, they've looked good at times, but like an LSU team, they're not consistent, a little rough around the edges. I think that costs them another game down the stretch. Number 8 is Georgia. I really want to buy this Georgia team, but they have to win out, and that means they have to beat Florida. They have to beat Alabama. This is not a situation where they could, if they were undefeated coming in the SEC championship game, I think they could possibly lose to Alabama and still make the college football playoff. But already having a loss and a bad loss at that, losing by 20 points to LSU, they have to win out, and they have to look good as they win out. And I don't see this as a Georgia team that can get by both Florida and Alabama. And so because of that, I'm going to have to sell Georgia, even though I think that they're probably a more talented team than a lot of those, probably more talented than Michigan, probably more talented than Texas, teams that, they win out and they're in. OU at number 9, I think a similar boat to Texas with easy road to the college football playoff as far as, only ranked team left on their schedule is West Virginia, and then whoever they would have to play in the conference championship if they were to make it to there. But I'm just selling them because I don't think they have enough talent. Their defense, they do not have a elite defense. Kyler Murray's looked good, but when it's come down to it, if it's a game on the line and it's saying, hey, am I going to risk my body or am I going to try to, keep it healthy so I can have a career in the MLB? That's what Kyler Murray's chosen, the latter. And so I think there's a quarterback who wants to win but doesn't want to win bad enough that he would do whatever it takes. And so I look at this OU team and I don't think that they're elite. And so I'm selling them. Number 10, UCF. You unfortunately really have to sell UCF. I regardless of how good they are, the voters don't think they're good enough. And unless they're like scoring 80 points a game and they blow out USF, I just don't see a way that this UCF team can make it into the college football playoff unless like absolute chaos, ensue. I mean, there would have to be. I mean, there probably couldn't be any undefeated teams, or there would have to be a whole lot of 2-loss teams in the top 5 for UCF to have a chance of getting in. And I at this point, the college football playoff committee has said we're definitely valuing you being in a Power 5 conference. And unfortunately for UCF, until they go to an 8-team format, I don't think there's any chance that a team like UCF or whoever it is in the future that's good but just hasn't played anybody, I don't think there's a chance that they can make it in. So that's my top 10 buy or sell. I'll give a quick top 4 kind of off the top of my head, but Bama number 1, I like them number 1. Why not? Like, you cannot not have them at number 1. Number 2, I would say Ohio State, just because they've looked, I would say, other than Bama, the most consistent of any team. I'm throwing Notre Dame at number 3. I just like them a little more than Clemson, like I've said. I just never really had a great feeling about Clemson this year. But I do think I have Clemson at number 4. I think at this point, they went out, they're in the playoff. So there's the top 4. That's a little college football talk. Next up, we're going to talk a little basketball with a special guest. All right, we now welcome on our NBA analyst, guest NBA analyst, and RUF campus minister, John Trapp, to talk about the NBA season, which is starting. So welcome on, John.
Thanks so much, Thomas. It's really fun to be here. This is kind of fulfilling a lifelong dream of wanting to have somebody listen to me talk about the NBA besides my wife, because she gets really tired of that.
All right, so let's start it off. Let's talk about some sleeper teams that you think have a chance at making a run at the title.
Oh, man. I mean, the hard thing with the NBA right now is they're so – it seems like it's such a hard deal to beat Golden State.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to imagine anyone really challenging them. But I think some teams that I could see making a deeper run than maybe people are expecting. I mean, the trendy team right now is Milwaukee.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of good reasons for that. Budenholzer is – if he's not a top-tier coach, he's a lot higher tier than Jason Kidd was last year.
Without a doubt.
And they're going to have some floor spacers now, which will hopefully allow Giannis to operate. So having Brook Lopez and Ilyasova is going to be, I think, really key for their offense. And so mainly I just want to see Giannis. I want to see everything that Giannis can do. I want them to just give him the keys to the engine and let him run with it.
You think he has a chance at winning the MVP this year?
Yeah. He's my MVP pick. I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves on what we're talking about, but I think Giannis, the narrative is kind of there for him to win it this year, and I think he'll do it. He's young. He's got everyone excited about him. His game is really fun to watch. He's got a lot of growth that he can still have. Offensively, I think they're going to let him facilitate more this year. And I think having Middleton back for a full season is going to be really huge for them.
Yeah, another team up north that people are kind of calling a sleeper team, but off, the problems with Jimmy Butler, the Timberwolves. Can they pull it together? And obviously they kind of have the talent, but do you think that they can kind of put stuff aside and contend for something in the West?
I don't know. I think the answer is they could. The question is, can they put it aside? And I don't know. Jimmy doesn't seem to be real happy right now. And when Jimmy ain't happy, ain't nobody happy on his team. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I kind of think that he's going to get traded. I think Thibodeau knows that they need Jimmy, though. Yeah. And Thibodeau wants a job still, and he knows he needs to win. Yeah. And winning means having Jimmy around. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see if if Tibbs is able to part with him and get anything for him. But the West, it's kind of sad. Like, the Timberwolves have kind of gone all in to get him, and they really have a chance to make some noise if they can just get their act together with their players. Yeah,
that's a crazy situation. But you talked about the Warriors being the favorites. Is there anyone who can challenge them? I mean, they now have 5 All-Stars in their starting lineup.
I know. Don't remind me. It makes me so sad. I love the NBA. The Warriors, ruining the NBA. They're really not, though. I think it's fun to have a team to cheer against. Yeah. And, there's a team. If you get on Highway 71 and then get on I-10, go a little bit east of here, it's called the Houston Rockets. And I think last year they were on the cusp, and they had a statistical anomaly happen where they couldn't make a 3, or maybe anomaly, choke job. I don't know what you want to call it. But I don't see them being way worse. I think that they've got some interesting new players in, and I think Houston could really bother them. And don't count out the king. Don't count him out. LeBron's been this would be the first time in how many years that he wouldn't make the finals?
8,
9?
8 or 9?
Yeah, I think it's 9. This would be his 9th in a row if he does it. So I I'm really curious to see what LeBron looks like playing in a fast-paced offense, playing in L.A. with all those young kids.
Mm-hmm.
He's never had athletes around him.
Yeah.
When's the last time LeBron has played with anyone kind of athletic? I mean,
Kyrie maybe.
Yeah, Kyrie maybe, but he's not. But
one.
Kyrie's not like an above the rim guy either. I mean, he's never really had these toys to play with like he's gonna have with these guys in LA. So I'm very interested to see what LeBron does with the Lakers.
You think that, like, if they stick around in a couple years, they could become a dynasty with LeBron kind of growing all the young guys?
Yeah, well, and that's a lot of that's gonna be who's that next big free agent that they're gonna sign.
Right.
They've got the money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw Anthony Davis happened to get a new agent.
Ooh.
Who happens to work for Clutch Sports, who happens to be owned by LeBron James' best friend.
Wow.
So just saying there's a little bit of smoke there. I don't know if there's any fire in the Anthony Davis to L.A. rumors, but if that happened.
That would be such a dangerous team.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
LeBron and AD.
With Ingram a couple years older, with Lonzo a couple years older.
Yeah. Them and the Warriors that would be a fun series.
I know. And the Warriors might look different in a couple of years too. I mean,
it's kind of been blown up today on Instagram, but there was a picture that like the Warriors somebody posted with like all the Warriors posting with their rings, and Kevin Durant's brother was like, "Glad you got one more in your hand before you get out of there."
What?
Yeah.
Like he commented on that?
He commented like on the picture.
I love Instagram so much. NBA Twitter, it's the best.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And it wouldn't surprise me that, Durant has 2, maybe 3 rings at the end of this. And
why would he leave? Why?
I mean, that is a good question because you can win more.
He already made everyone's already mad at him. I guess he's just trying. Is that just a narrative arc, a new narrative arc for his career? Is he just chasing being liked again?
Yeah, goes back to OKC.
Ooh,
that'd be crazy.
I don't know what Russ would think about that.
Yeah. that would be a fascinating situation. But, I mean, at this point, didn't he take a pay cut?
He did.
Yeah, and so I think that's the only thing I could see him leaving for is for more money.
Yeah.
Which we've seen a lot of guys do.
Yeah.
And just the fact that the Warriors are going to have to get rid of some players or pay a lot of them less.
Well, one of the things I heard with KD, too, if he continues kind of copying LeBron and LeBron's path, LeBron left for Miami, went to go get his titles, and then wanted a new challenge. The challenge that's sitting there for KD is winning a title in New York. No one has won a title in New York, and talk about when New York basketball is winning, there is no place on earth to watch a game like Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that's true.
And if he can resurrect basketball in the Big Apple, and again, he would be going to, similar to LeBron, he'd be going to a team that's got some young up-and-coming guys.
Yep.
Porzingis, this rookie Kevin Knox looked awesome in Summer League.
Yeah.
And they'll get another high pick in this year's draft because they're going to suck. But if KD goes there next year, that would be the East, like you said earlier, it's wide open.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd have a bunch of finals trips ahead of him, and New York would worship that man.
Mm-hmm. And they could pay him, too.
And they could pay him that money.
Man, that would be fascinating. A lot of moves. You talked about the Rockets earlier. Adding Carmelo.
I'm so afraid.
How is that going to affect the team?
Well, I think James Harden has a new friend to go to the clubs with. I think that helps. Chris Paul's got his banana boat buddy.
Yep.
Other than that, I'm kind of concerned. I mean, I like Melo. I think that he's had a great career. He was one of the least efficient ISO players in basketball last year, and now he's going to the team that runs the most ISO ball in the league, and he's just going to have to accept a new role if he's willing to sit in the corner and make threes. Hopefully make threes. Hopefully make threes in Game 7 when we need him to make threes, unlike anyone else on our team last year. Then I think he could be good. It's a high-risk situation, but it's kind of – Daryl Morey said this last year before they traded for Chris Paul, which is when you've got a team like the Warriors, you just have to increase your risk profile.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to increase your risk profile to have a shot at beating them. And last year they did. Like, they should have won that game. I think – well, they had a chance. I'm still really kind of sensitive about that.
Yeah.
But I think that the Melo move was one that they had to make to up their risk profile, to give them a chance. Hopefully D'Antoni can use them well. I mean, the two of them have been together in the past.
That's true.
And wasn't all roses and unicorns when that happened. So we'll see what happens this time.
Yeah, and you think he would be okay with taking a backseat role? Obviously, he didn't really do that with the Thunder last year, and that kind of hurt them.
I think the difference is, I think Chris Paul and James Harden have such a different demeanor than Westbrook.
Right.
And because of CP3's relationship that he's had with Melo for a long time, I mean, those guys are legit friends. Like, I think they're in each other's weddings, they vacation together. That's different than showing up in Podunk, Oklahoma City with a grumpy Russell Westbrook, who's just like got his triple crown MVP thing, and all, triple double MVP. And so I think that the dynamic hopefully will be different, just having Chris on the team and Harden there. So, and maybe a humbled Melo. Right. Maybe a humbled Melo is a good Melo. Humbled hoodie Melo. Give me that guy.
Oh, man. So the last couple years, obviously, Rockets kind of choked. Last year before that.
Wait, what'd you say? We choked?
Well, I mean,
Thomas, I'm offended.
Look. Let me get through the question, and then you can answer.
Sorry, I'm salty.
But like, what does it take? Obviously, you know, the Clippers have done that in the past, and then obviously they just fell apart.
Yeah.
But a lot of teams who have struggled, what does it take to kind of get over that hump of falling short in the playoffs?
That's a great question. I do think reps matters.
Yeah, I agree.
And, you know, being in the building when the game is on the line, and the next time that comes around, there's a sense. I mean, we even saw this with LeBron. I mean, LeBron. You go back and watch that finals where the Heat played the Mavericks. LeBron looks like a totally different player. I mean, he'd never been there before. You see that with KD and the Thunder the first time they went to the finals against Miami the next year. So the fact that the Rockets have been there, I think, matters and will help. I mean, that was Chris Paul's first time to be that deep in the playoffs.
That's right.
And hopefully having Melo around. The other thing that's really been apparent the last couple of playoffs is Harden just seems totally gassed at the end of the year. Totally gassed. And now he's got his MVP. Hopefully we're going to rest him a little bit more during the season. He's going to have some more energy. Yeah. So I think that the fact that we've been there, and hopefully we'll have a more rested roster moving into the playoffs. Because, look, the West there's going to be two teams in the West competing for the 1 seed. Right. But other than that, like, I think that we can kind of like cruise in a little bit to a favorable seed. Yeah. And hopefully not burn our guys out.
Yeah. Well, I think we've seen that a lot in the past with Russell Westbrook getting exhausted by the playoffs, and that's why the Warriors and the Spurs in the past have been so successful, is because the Warriors just have so many players that they can afford to rest one. Yeah. Pop just being a genius, knowing how to manage minutes. But that's a big thing.
We're only gonna have 3 All-Stars on the floor tonight instead of 4. So sad for the Warriors.
Yeah, but I mean the playoffs. It's a long. I mean it's 2.5 months. Yep. Extra of playing basketball after playing 82 games. Yep. And so, I certainly think adding Carmelo, at least adding another scorer so that, you know, Harden doesn't have to do it all by himself, can certainly give him a break.
Carmelo's just got to want it. Carmelo's he's like the dude, the Greg, when you go play a pickup game, and there's that guy that you know could just score whenever he wants to, but he just wants to jack threes. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? That guy? Yeah. And you just put your head down and get in the paint. Maybe guard a guy on the other end of the floor, and we'd win, and we wouldn't have to give up the court to who's got next. Carmelo is that guy, and we need him to want it this year. Yeah. And hopefully he will, because he's been kind of crapped on by everyone for about the last 18 months. And if he's sick of it and ready to make it happen, he's got the perfect situation to do it.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's move to the East, where they've finally gotten rid of LeBron.
Oh, yeah.
Finally got rid of
the
him.
rain has ended.
Yeah. So now that for the first time in 9 years, the East is wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Celtics favorites. Who else could win the East this year?
Yeah, I think it's Boston's to lose.
Mm-hmm.
They even showed that last night. I don't know if you watched the game, but they are so deep.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought Rozier in later in the first quarter, and it was like bringing another starting point guard into the game who's got a totally different feel. And, yeah, they're definitely the team to beat. The Raptors are a major X factor because of your favorite player that they just acquired.
The traitor.
The
traitor.
The quitter. I want to, talk about a game. That's the game to go to this year.
Absolutely.
There is no regular season game that would be better to attend
So much booing.
than Toronto Spurs.
Yeah. I mean, because Spurs fans have never seen like a lack of loyalty like that. Because that's when you build a franchise on like loyalty of players for 20 years. And then you think,
and you pour
those
everything
guys,
into that guy.
Right.
That's the guy.
Right. He's the
into.
next guy. You lose the big three, but you still have him. He's the future, and then he just disappears.
It's the weirdest story.
Yeah. It's gonna be a wild game.
Someone's gonna do an amazing documentary on that story like 20 years from now, and all the secrets are gonna be known.
Yeah, because as of this point, we really don't know much.
We don't know.
Because it was his uncle talking for him the whole time.
I know.
Yeah.
He might be an alien. I still think Kawhi might be an alien.
Well,
Did you hear him laugh? Maybe he was being like researched last year, and the Spurs didn't want that going on anymore. They're like, get him out of here. I don't know. It's the weirdest. That's the most bizarre. That and the Markelle Fultz forgetting how to shoot are the two most bizarre NBA stories that I can remember in a while. They both happened last year.
Well, and that was almost a trade. The Spurs almost trade for Fultz. I know they wanted Simmons or Embiid.
Yeah,
that would have been
keep
crazy.
Dreaming.
That would have been crazy.
You got Jakob Poeltl instead.
And DeMar DeRozan.
And DeMar. He'll be good.
Yeah, but do you have any feel on what the Spurs can do this year? Obviously, without DeJounte, it's a big blow with him tearing the ACL.
Yeah, and White being out for a while.
White's out for
he looked good.
3-6 weeks.
Yeah, I just believe in Pop.
Yeah.
You can't not pick them to be in the playoffs until they demonstrate that they can't make the playoffs.
Right.
Until then, you just have to expect that Pop and some duct tape and a few European players are going to somehow make it into the 8 or 7 seed in the West.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I think the Spurs will be fine. I think they'll win somewhere in the low to mid 40s, and maybe that'll be enough to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I kind of have a feeling that this could be like a Pop Coach of the Year because obviously he hasn't won it the last 10 years because it's his award because he's the Coach of the Year every year, and so they're like, okay, you can't get it every year, so we have to pass it around a little bit. But I think this is a year where he can say, okay, I'm taking a team of not a lot of good players. Even DeRozan and LaMarcus are kind of like B-level star players.
Yeah.
But if he could take those guys and take the supporting cast and have them, 4 or 5 seed in the West.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely possible just because he's Pop. I think that could be a Coach of the Year, scenario.
Yeah, that would be really fun. It's one of those things where Pop should win it every year.
Right.
But he doesn't always have the situation and the narrative line to do it. But yeah, it would be fun to see him get it. I want to go back to your question about the East because I thought of another team that I meant to talk about because it's got one of our Longhorns on it.
Yeah.
Watch out for the Indiana Pacers this year.
Yeah.
They look really good. So Oladipo, he just totally changed his body 2 off seasons ago.
Yeah.
Got on a different diet. That dude is shredded. I don't know if you've seen what Miles Turner looks like now, but that guy looks like he's ready to do some freaking work. He is yoked.
Oh yeah.
And the same with Sabonis too.
Yeah.
And so they've got these interesting young big men. If they can figure out how to play those two guys at the same time, and because it's funny, like Turner kind of plays offensively like a 4, but defensively like a 5.
Yeah.
And Sabonis is the opposite. Then if they can figure out a way to keep them on the court at the same time with Oladipo, they got Tyreek Evans in this year, McDermott in to stretch the floor. They're going to be a fun team to watch in the East. And Oladipo's still young. He could keep getting better. I mean, there's a sleeper MVP pick for you. I mean, if he keeps on the trajectory that he's been on, the Pacers could really make some noise this year.
Yeah. Well, and you look back to 2 years ago when the Thunder made that trade for Paul George.
Man, everyone thought that was such a bad trade, and now it looks so good.
Like, do you think the Pacers have won? I mean, obviously Paul George has still been great for the Thunder, but
yeah, it's one of those weird. That seems like one of those weird trades where it worked out for both teams,
right?
Because Oladipo wasn't getting his shine next to Westbrook, and he never was going to. No. And they needed a 3-and-D guy, and George is like, he's more than a 3-and-D guy, but he's kind of like the best version of that type of player that you could ask for.
Right.
And the fact that they got him to stay was kind of miraculous, and I think really good just for the future of that franchise. But man, the Pacers really hit it big with Oladipo, and don't sleep on Sabonis either. I think he's going to be really good this year. That guy knows how to play. I always like NBA players who have family members who are also professional basketball players.
Yeah,
those guys just kind of know how to show up.
Right.
They know what it's like to be in the league. Sabonis is one of those guys. Curry is one of those guys. Justice Winslow is one of those guys. So you just look down the list. If you can, Al Horford is one of those guys. Mm-hmm. Kobe was one of those guys. When someone's dad has been around the game, those players generally just know how to be a professional and how to develop. And I think Sabonis is going to be one of those guys.
Interesting you didn't mention the 76ers as a favorite in the East. Do you not like them that much?
They're so trendy.
That's true.
And I don't know. They're really good. I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't do more in the offseason.
Yeah.
And there's some moves sitting there for them that if they want to go for it this year, and it's really Jimmy Butler. I mean, if they brought in Jimmy, a little bit more scoring, a little bit more defense, then I think that they could make a move. But it seems like they're pretty content just developing the guys that they have right now, which is fine. But I have a hard time imagining them, just the way that their roster is composed, the lack of shooting that they have on their roster. Yeah. It's hard to imagine them making a really deep run.
Yeah, you think they're a couple years away from being really good.
Yeah, Ben Simmons has to learn how to shoot.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
The fact that, like, I feel like that's what a lot of these guys are, the players who struggle from three, they're like, okay, I'm going to take this offseason to work on the three ball. And Simmons is one of those few guys who is like, I'm just not even going to worry about that.
No, he doesn't care.
Which he's going to have to care.
He's got to make free throws then.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to get a bunch of points from the 3-point line, then you've got to take it in the paint. You've got to get close, high percentage shots, and that also means you're going to get fouled. And he's so freaking strong.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched that game last night. He had a couple plays where he has that LeBron gift that hardly anyone else, and maybe it's just him on LeBron, where he can just kind of turn the corner and explode to the rim, and no one can really get in front of him and stop him. Yeah. But you've got to make your free throws if that's your game. Yeah. And right now that's a problem for him.
Yeah. All right, so last question, what are Eastern, Western, and Finals predictions?
Oh man, I want to be interesting, but also I like to be right. I'm going to pick, I think the Celtics will come out of the East. Yeah. And I think Golden State has some real issues to deal with. I think Boogie may not be the solution to their problems. Yeah. We don't know what kind of Boogie's coming back.
Right.
I think all the buzz about KD leaving is going to affect them. Yeah. And they're just going to have a lot of stuff to deal with that I think are going to be distractions. So I'm picking Houston.
Wow.
I'm picking Rockets, Celtics. And I think we're going to bring a title back to H-Town.
Wow.
I think that's what's going down.
Yeah, you think the Astros win the World Series too?
Well, I thought they were going to after I watched them crush my Cleveland Indians, but now the Red Sox look pretty unbeatable. Now, let's make Houston title town.
Yeah,
I'm
Texans?
Super biased, but
Texans?
No, settle down, Thomas. I mean, I believe God can do amazing things, but even that's a little bit ridiculous.
Well, Houston Dynamo, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know when
good
MLS
Dynamo.
is going on. But.
Yeah, right.
Oh man. Well, John, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this was so fun. I loved talking. I like talking sports whenever, and thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah. Anyways, this is it for the episode. So from the Thomas Fitch Sports Show, I'm Thomas Fitch. Hook 'em horns.
Everything.